We might be streaming to YouTube.
If we do care, it's too bad.
We
We'll
might
just
be
be,
streaming to
we'll be like
Ustream,
Frank, we'll be even more
Facebook,
anxiety with it.
YouTube and Twitter. We're not going to check. We're going to hope. And
It's technology. What could go wrong?
we're ready.
Oh, I just got a notification. Gillmor Gang is live now on Facebook.
Yeah, it's on my watch.
Alrighty.
I just got the Twitter notification.
Perfect.
I'm
Thank
guessing
God
that
we're
means
not waiting
LinkedIn is
for
a go.
the announcements.
Welcome, viewers.
All
So
Why
right.
don't we get
Still
notifications on LinkedIn?
All right, quiet,
for
See
these?
please.
if you can get, I'm going to get your just a little bit closer there. Okay.
Just a little bit closer.
Now
Oh, I
you,
didn't know you were going to scooch up.
I always
Okay.
scooch up.
You always scoot.
Well, I have to interrupt Keith, and so
He's a really good.
the only way it works is to go like that.
Because the night is so long.
Alrighty.
Ooh, the boy can sing. The
Nope.
boy can sing.
Too quiet,
Yes, he
please,
can.
Keith.
Quiet on the Gillmor Gang set, please. Mute is off. And we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. We've got a rare Friday show. Okay, I'm done.
no, you have to introduce people.
Oh,
or
I
I
do?
will.
Go ahead.
You want me to? Oh, okay. All right. Joining us today from Palo Alto, California, just down the street, is Keith Tier.
Happy to be here on this
What was
wonderful
that?
Friday. That was just some spontaneous kind of foolish thing that I didn't even know what I was doing.
You had a twitch or something.
Muscle memory isn't always good.
I thought he was going for a 3-pointer.
Wow.
Okay.
I was making fun of Elon Musk's, what's he called? Asperger's.
I had one of those for dinner.
I don't know if you saw that tweet yesterday, but there was a whole thread by him hurt that somebody was making fun of his Asperger's.
Uh-oh.
Asperger's is a term no longer used.
We're still introducing from the what is it, the great state of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. See, I can get that right. Is of course I'm messing up all the
Well, you're going to lay him in, so it's your
is-
problem.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Is Dennis Pombriant. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Tina. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here, sitting in the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where it's kind of overcast and muggy.
Hey, is it warm there now?
Yes, it should reach 90 tomorrow or the day after.
Holy wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, oh, I see. I keep every time this bounces back to you, Steve, because of the mic. All right. And in the Seattle area, or Seattle proper, I think, is our good friend Michael Markman.
How do you do? Not proper at all. I'm in the area.
Okay.
You see that body of water behind me?
Yes.
That separates me from Seattle.
Does that make you improper?
It certainly does. I'm on what they call the east side,
He's
that
saucy.
body of water, which is Lake Washington. And by the way, I was born in a Commonwealth. I was born in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Me too.
There's only about 4 Commonwealths. There's Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, I think Virginia,
And Kentucky.
and Kentucky.
Yeah. Dr. Oz says hi to you guys.
Is he still ahead?
By 1,000 votes at the moment. A little over 1,000 votes.
Excellent.
But that's less than
Let
that
the
would
revolution
require.
begin.
That would require a recount, though, I think.
Yes.
What?
Automatic.
And our friend from London, actually not from London, but he lives in London, is a resident of the UK, I believe, is
I am.
an old and dear friend, Frank Radis. Hi, Frank.
Tina, Steve, gang. Hola. I am actually from the great city of Washington, D.C. That's right.
Okay, yes, you are. And I've done everyone except for,
Dennis the Menace.
no.
Oh, you did, Dennis.
And Brent Leary.
Brent,
I don't think you've been to
Brent.
Atlanta yet.
Brent?
Brent Leary.
Leary.
My friend Brent Leary, who does a lot of this stuff, a lot of broadcasting, and he's sandwiched us in today because he's got a few more shows to do. Or maybe we're not in the middle. We're
This is it for me today.
Oh, okay. Brent Leary from somewhere close to Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, Brent.
Hi, and I'm not as lethargic as I was before.
Oh, so happy. The shot has worn off.
Was that
Yes.
Moderna, right? Courtesy Moderna.
Yes, that was my first Moderna one. I had 3 Pfizers and now 1 Moderna.
All right.
That's my ratio
buddy.
too.
Can we get a little LA Rams hat tip? Thank you. All
You're
right.
protected, man.
All
You
right,
are
Steve,
protected.
I hand the show back to you.
Very good. It was a
That
nice
was what,
vacation.
3.5 minutes of introductions.
Fantastic.
I thought Steve sucked at this, but now I realize he's really good.
Ooh,
Oh, wow.
taking shots. over there.
Man, man, oh man.
I think I was kind of thinking about my old show, which I used to take a lot of time kind of like introducing.
No, Tina.
Will that show ever come back, by the way?
It's
G3?
okay, Keith, you broke my heart, but it's okay.
It was a good joke until it wasn't, and now I have to apologize. I feel bad for it.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
as he smiles, he feels real bad for it.
Yeah.
That's my demeanor. I even
Very
smile when
happy
bad
about
things
it.
happen.
Knew I'd screw it up, so.
I did not. And you didn't.
Oh, I did.
No.
because of
No, you
video. You haven't seen it yet.
It's impossible to screw up the Gillmor gang. The whole
That's true.
What does that mean, though?
Dance more.
well.
Left dance.
I have a quick question I'd like to ask the gang because I don't really see all of American TV here. Has anyone seen the YouTube TV commercial that says that it costs, you can save $750 a year using YouTube and not buying cable? Has
Yeah, I've
anyone, you
seen
seen
it.
that, Brent?
Yeah. Mhm. It ain't working for me, but yeah, sure.
I actually have not seen that ad, but I do believe it's probably true.
I think I just saw it within the last couple of days, and it's only true if you don't buy anything else other than YouTube TV. How many people
Okay.
are out there who really only have one streaming source at this point?
Yeah. At most people have 3, I think, is the number that I've heard.
Wow.
I'm I'm above average in something finally.
Yeah, me too.
I'm way above average.
You know, when I move, my wife is actually going to find out exactly how many dongles are in the back of the 3 TVs. It's like guitars. Oh no, if I die, she sells them for what I told her I paid for them.
Let me guess, Dennis, how many streaming services do you have? Because if I were to guess, you'd probably have the least amount of anyone on here.
How do you measure it? I mean, like Xfinity is sort of a consolidator of a bunch of different services, right?
They have their own service. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's I don't know.
Do you have
Paramount
Netflix?
Plus.
Let me ask you, do you have Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have like Disney Plus?
No.
Amazon?
Yeah, do you have a Prime account?
I got a Prime account. I've never used it.
Oh,
Wow. Interesting. What about
We can
HBO?
get Amazon through Xfinity. We pay a
You
lot.
can get it, but you can't look at it unless you have an account, which apparently
So
you
what's the
do.
point?
Well, I mean, realistically, guys, we're home every night. There's just not enough time to watch all that's available.
yes, there is.
How about you can read a
You-
book?
The new Bosch is
What's
on
that?
tonight, guys. So I'm in a hurry here.
I've been watching all of the Bosches up till now. Yeah, it's a good series so far.
All right. So if you're watching Bosch, then you are definitely using Prime. So you are taking advantage of it. What about
Oh,
HBO
okay.
Max? That's the only other one I'll ask. HBO Max. You have that?
Probably.
So you have probably more services than you even thought you did.
Well, you see, I have people for this, or a person.
Me too. I have no idea what's on what.
I'm told to sit down, drink my tea, and eat a cookie.
Wow.
That's why I
What a
say
bad life.
nobody
Where-
should
where do
ever
you
have
get
to
the
know.
cookie?
Where do you get
Do you make
From
the cookie?
Amazon? Amazon.
It's a subscribe and save off of Amazon.
You know, that's why I say you should never have to know where you get your content from. You should just ask for your content and have it served up to you, and
Right.
forget
That's
about
the
it.
microphone. That's the little thing here on the right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, enough of me.
Well, how about you?
And now back to Tina.
No, no, thank you.
Okay,
I got
so
one. I got one.
All right, Brent.
yeah,
I know. It's so, doesn't happen that often. Did you see it was either earlier this week or sometime last week? Jeff Bezos kind of took a shot at Biden.
Saw that.
Yes, I did see that.
Kinda.
Remind us of what he said.
Well, apparently, Biden, now I know this is a surprise. Sometimes he just says stuff. Doesn't really come off as being well thought out, or, he just shoots from the lip or the hip or wherever you want to call it.
I think the lip was right.
And he said something to the effect that, the inflation is so high because of, something. You guys probably remember exactly what it was, but something like that definitely caught Bezos's attention. Like Biden conflated something with something else to make this something else a primal cause of inflation. I can't remember exactly what it was. I just remember that because he tweeted it out, I believe, or he did it on some social network or channel. Bezos actually tweeted out this tweet from Biden should be checked for fake news or factual. He should get some kind of punishment for creating basically fake news. I thought it was kind of interesting.
I think Michael Markman just looked it up.
He might have.
Well, it was
And-
disinformation that he was.
Disinformation, fake
And
news.
there's a committee or a group that was formed ostensibly for all Americans. And what basically Bezos is saying is that it's not the deplorable half.
Mm.
Okay.
Well, there's
Wasn't that-
And
wasn't that
the woman
a
who
whole
was in
bunch in
charge
there.
of it, the
There's a
woman
bunch
who
to
was
unpack there.
the woman
Yeah.
who was in charge of it quit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
didn't the committee get disbanded or something?
well, that's effectively what happened is that
Yeah.
she quit.
She was the committee.
Well,
She
it
was
was
not
a-
used to having, problems with her mail and people calling her on the phone with threats. So she quit.
oh.
Mm.
That happened after Bezos did his tweet.
Uh-huh.
No. I think you're conflating the Bezos argument with everybody dumping on the disinformation. I don't know what it was. Committee, society, the disinformation.
I don't think I'm
agency.
conflating it, but we'll take it to the disinformation court for
No, because the
No.
disinformation thing was a major cause célèbre on the right almost immediately. And what Bezos said was just lost in the noise. The thing that set Bezos off was that Biden said that wealthy corporations should pay their fair share of taxes. And that's something that Bezos could
Well,
not
he
deny.
said that in regards to that's one of the reasons why inflation is so high
Yes.
is because corporations aren't paying their fair share, which is really a complete conflation of the two.
That is true.
And Bezos called him on it in a tweet.
so raise your hand if you think that Bezos is right.
I think he was petty.
Oh,
I agree with both of you.
Yeah.
Is
I think that's
Bezos
right.
paying his fair share?
No.
Is Amazon?
I don't think Amazon paid much.
There you go.
I think
So I mean, there are 2 points. There's the question of corporate taxes and what causes inflation. And so Biden, smashed them together, and Bezos raised his hand and said they have nothing to do with each other. But the issue of corporate taxes is still on the table.
yeah,
Well,
I think the Biden thing is not really worth discussing just because he made a gaffe and so what. But the corporate tax thing is somewhat worth discussing because corporate taxes are defined by the law, and offsetting spending against income is part of that law. So when Amazon doesn't pay taxes because it didn't retain profit or make profit, even though it made a lot of revenue, very little of it was profit because they spend on growth. So they end up not paying any tax. And that's kind of okay because they're spending on growth, which, by the way, is a good thing, right? Because it grows GDP and it gives people jobs, and those people spend money and sales tax happens. And so if you were to analyze how much tax is Amazon responsible for versus how much tax does Amazon pay, Amazon's responsible for a huge amount of tax, even if it pays zero itself.
well, that's spoken like a rich
because
person.
I was just going to say that.
Like a what?
That's spoken like a rich person.
Oh, I see.
What you're really saying is income should only be taxed once, and Amazon has taken great advantage of the tax laws as written that make it hard for them to have to pay income or tax on their income, to the point that the reason guys like Jeff Bezos don't pay any taxes is because he's on salary for something like $80,000 a year, and he owns a ton of stock. He borrows against the stock for his income and pays the mortgage on whatever he bought, and then deducts the interest on what he paid. That's why he's not paying any taxes. And I think what Biden's bigger point is that the tax code, no surprise, is riddled with loopholes for people like him. Not that and those loopholes don't apply to you and me, or maybe they apply to you, but I can tell you that I'm not in Jeff Bezos' league where taxes are concerned.
Now that's the third thing, though, Dennis. I mean, his personal taxes, Amazon's taxes, obviously there's different regimes that govern them because personal tax and corporate tax are separate. So I was talking about Amazon's corporate tax, meaning we probably would all agree it's good for a company that's growing to reinvest its profits in more growth. That's just common sense.
Especially if you're a shareholder.
Well, I understand that, but if I go back a generation and I look at a company like Digital Equipment Corporation, they paid taxes. They plowed everything back into that they could back into their company, and anybody who owned stock made money because the stock appreciated, not because they got a dividend. In that intervening generation, there have been a lot of changes to the tax law to make it easier for corporations to not have to pay any tax at all. And again, I think that's part of what our boy Biden was getting at.
I think it's a losing argument when you start focusing in on tax as being the solution to any problem. Not that I'm against tax. I think society, I'm pretty comfortable if roughly half of the wealth of society gets pooled together somehow and spent on everybody. So I'm pro-tax. But I think the narrative can't be about tax. Tax is a means to an end. And I think the narrative has to be about the end, not the means.
Okay, so the end has to do with healthcare, has to do with childcare, has to do with elder care, has to do with infrastructure. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of what the end is.
Education, healthcare.
Education is certainly in there.
There you go. So I'm
infrastructure.
No, I'm totally with you on that. But the minute, I mean, it's true, right? Even poor people, when they hear that taxes are going up, even if it's wrong, they somehow assume it's bad for them. I don't know why they do, because it often is good for them, but they internalize that tax is bad. That's a pretty hard thing to argue against successfully. You can be right and still lose.
Yeah, but
I think
all this tax talk, it kind of is thrown when he conflates all this with the reason for inflation. I think that's the biggest issue here.
Yeah,
He was trying to kind of get rid of, the inflation is my fault by blaming it on the tax structure and corporate America not paying their share. That doesn't have anything really to do, or not that much to do, with why inflation is so high. And I think that's the biggest thing he really had to gaff on. And Bezos called him on it in a way that he probably shouldn't have been the right one to call him on it, because all of this other conversation jumps in when a guy like Bezos, and being as wealthy as he is, he says something, then all of a sudden it becomes about him not paying taxes.
That smoke screen to the argument.
Look,
Well, I would
the
disagree with some of
economy,
that, too.
the economy
disagree.
and the government's role in the economy is such a complex, intertwined system with multiple interdependencies that anytime you try and reduce any piece of it to a soundbite, you're going to be leaving so much out that you're going to get it wrong. And it's very hard to comprehend it, and it's even harder to communicate it in ways that people can grasp.
Well, I have to disagree a little bit, because one of the classic definitions of inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. What Biden was saying in shorthand was that if there were fewer dollars in corporate coffers, instead paying more taxes, the U.S. government wouldn't have to borrow money, which is inflationary, and be able to pay its bills. And the corporate sector would still be able to function and do everything that it's doing, but it would be taking part in the economy in a way that it has absented itself from for decades, maybe since Reagan.
Yeah, but inflation hasn't been as bad as it is now since Reagan, and all this. There has been a lot of change in the way corporations have acted. They've been doing this for decades. It seems like the more obvious answer is supply chain, pandemic. Those probably played a bigger role in inflation than the current tax situation, because that's the one thing that hasn't changed in 40
So
years.
how is it that the oil?
One of the big reasons that inflation hasn't been a problem for a very long time has been that the U.S. government has been printing money to cover its taxation shortfalls.
Can't keep printing money. How is it that the oil companies can keep raising prices yet make the biggest profits?
They're related.
Well, exactly.
Because their costs are constant.
Oh, there you go.
And huge.
Yeah.
I have to say, this has been a rather refreshing conversation.
Thanks for starting it.
In other
Hey, speaking of
economic
billionaires, never mind.
in other economic news, we have crossed into bear market territory as of today, where the S&P is down 20%.
What happened? And the futures were so good overnight, and then all of a sudden, nosedive again.
People are trying to catch a falling knife with their hand. They're constantly looking for the bottom, trying to predict the bottom so they can go in and buy. And you can't do that. At least I don't know many people that can. So every day, everybody, are we at the bottom yet? Are we at the bottom yet? Are we at?
That's if you're a trader. There's another aspect worth talking about. Does the sharp decline in the value of the stock markets and the indexes presage a coming decline in the overall economy? How big of a recession are we going to be experiencing over the next 18 months? How many layoffs are we going to start seeing? How many high level board meetings and executive suite meetings are now planning for how they're going to reduce costs? What's ahead for us?
I feel compelled to show you
the old adage that the stock market has predicted 12 of the last 8 recessions. Think about the numbers.
Did you say
I
12
got
out of
it.
Yes,
the
I
last
did. I
how many?
did. So,
It was funny.
so are we going to go? Are we going to go for 13 of the last 8 or 12 of the last 9?
What am I
Four-
missing?
14 of the
Prospect, we
last
don't know.
7.
I
14 of the
feel,
last 7.
I feel compelled to show you the front page of this week's unreleased That Was the Week, which is very on topic for this. Investing in the time of cholera.
The hell? Okay.
You have to read the thing in order to understand what he's talking about.
Well, I
Boil your water.
That-
Well,
yeah.
I could have said investing in the time of stock market crashes, but I thought loving the time of cholera was infinitely manipulatable to replace the word love with the word investing.
Hey, you know, it looked like an NFT to me. Oh, there goes Dennis.
all my
It will
front
be. It will be.
all my front pages in the future are going to become NFTs. That's the plan.
Ooh.
No, you're going to get rich on that.
You know, the only NFT that I thought I understood was Brent's guest today. Was that today, Brent? Your guy who's selling sports tickets as NFTs?
that was yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah, Kenny Lauer, who used to be, well, he was former head of marketing for the Golden State Warriors, now is working with an NFT, a company that is working in ticketing with blockchain and NFTs at their foundation. It was a pretty interesting conversation.
Yeah, I thought it was today because I live over here and time is backwards over here. I don't know.
Yeah, you're driving the wrong side of the road too.
Oh man, you know why that is, don't you?
No.
It has everything to do with jousting, right, Keith?
Oh, right-handed.
Wow.
Ah.
Interesting.
I don't know. Is that a wives' tale or is that true? I have no idea.
I don't know. It's circling the drain backwards in South America.
No, that's Australia, and it may
Oh.
not be a wives' tale. It may be a maiden's tale.
Ooh.
Well, as long as it's not a
Oh.
handmaiden's tale, it's very good.
Yeah, we're living through that one.
So
No kidding.
I thought, just to go back to the Bezos thing, since I find that more something that we can learn from as opposed to the crashing stock market. The thing I find interesting about what Bezos said is that he's right.
Yeah.
And, it took a very long time for us to be able to discuss what he is saying. Forget about what, Biden's supposed gaffe. I mean, Biden's supposed gaffe, as far as I can read it, is the platform of the Democratic Party. So I don't think that he misspoke. I just think that the Democrats are, in trouble. But
Well, at least they have a platform. The Republicans don't even have that.
well, I'm trying to conflate two
No,
things.
I really would challenge that. I don't think the platform of the Democratic Party is that lack of taxation of corporations causes inflation. That's just
That's
clearly
not what
nonsense.
What I'm saying is that the platform of the Democratic Party, as evidenced by the centrist turn of the Biden administration, is the corporations are not paying their fair share. That's what he was talking about.
That's an element of the Democratic
That's
platform.
correct. Yeah. It's an element that I think Bezos correctly pointed out is marketing.
Okay, but the way Keith articulated it is different from the way Biden mangled it.
How
I
are you saying there's no truth to the idea that corporations and wealthy individuals are not paying their fair share of taxes?
Well, I think you could go back and the changes to the tax structure were created and incentivized by which party?
Republicans.
Thank you. So if that's the case, then the Republicans are getting what they paid for. Right? So that's their market.
Republican donors are getting what they paid for.
Well, all I'm trying to say is that these things do not operate in a vacuum, as everybody has said. But everybody seems to want on this call to move away from the idea that Bezos said something out loud that the majority of the people on this call don't really want to continue to talk about.
I don't think that's
I'm
true.
happy to talk about it.
Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead. Is Bezos on the money about what Bezos said? Forget about what Biden supposedly said.
I think if anyone other than Bezos had said it, not that it wasn't on the money, but that he himself saying it was like a smokescreen. It threw up a cloud. I think he was right. But I think that it would have been better if it had been somebody else other than a billionaire.
Well, I think there's a deeper conversation, which I'll frame as when society produces wealth, and that wealth is sits in the hands of corporations, mostly because we live in capitalism. Some of it goes to government, and that's where tax comes in.
But this is confusing to what I'm trying to draw out here. What Bezos said effectively, I thought, was, oh, wait a minute. The Democrats talk about, changing the subject. They accuse the Republicans of doing something. And, oh, look, here the Democrats are doing something.
Wait, I'm sorry. This is all very confused. Tell me exactly what Bezos said.
All right, someone get the quote.
What is it that Bezos said that you're agreeing with?
Let me find the tweet because I think I posted it.
I'll paraphrase it as I understood it.
I think I posted in Telegram. What's
I'm
that
sure you
URL
did.
Uh,
again?
T./Gillmor.
What is that?
Okay, you guys, you work it out. Find out what the guy said.
All right, look, but what Biden said, which is not accurate.
I don't care what Biden said.
Well, but what Bezos said was that Biden was wrong. So how can you talk about what Bezos said without talking about what Biden said? Bezos said Biden was wrong, but you don't want to talk about what Biden said. This is a silly conversation, I think. You can't if two people are talking to each other, you can't say, let's ignore this guy and just listen to this guy. How does that make sense?
If you let me say it, I would tell you. I'm saying that Bezos said something simple, which is, don't look at the Democrat or the Republicans as being the purveyors of marketing messages in their rationalization of the universe. Democrats do that too. Here's an example. That's what he said.
That's not what he said.
That's
You're making up a story. I don't look. Biden got something wrong. Biden compressed and omitted parts of the Democratic message and did a typical Biden gaffe. And what he said didn't make much sense, to say that the way to conquer inflation is to have corporations pay their fair share. That just doesn't make sense. And Bezos pointed that out. Bezos also said it's worth talking about corporate taxes, it's worth talking about inflation, but they are not two sides of the same dynamic. They're two separate issues.
Okay, so the beginning of your comment.
But what Bezos, you can't take. I think you can't.
I know you keep circling back to what Biden said. What I heard you say was several talking points that I think come from the media. That he is gaffe prone. I don't think he was gaffe prone there. As I said about 10 minutes ago, I think he was spouting the Democratic platform.
Nobody in the Democratic platform says that corporate taxes cause inflation.
Everything that Biden has been saying about his Build Back Better, whatever it is, plan, and what their agenda is to avoid losing the their grip on power is that we need to make the tax code fairer. That is where they're going to get the revenue. When they talk about these big plans, they say it's paid for. What does that mean? It's paid for by shifting the balance of taxes, people who pay taxes, to rich, very rich people and corporations.
Yes,
That is
that's
the
the
center
Democratic
of the-
platform. That's not,
Okay,
but that's
good.
not what Bezos talked about.
That's right.
That's
Now we have it
That's
on
right.
the screen.
I've got it on my screen. The thing you got to know is that Biden started by saying that if corporations paid their fair share, there would be less inflation. Bezos ultimately fired back. There was a couple of go-rounds, but Bezos ultimately fired back, saying that that was misdirection. What was really the cause of inflation was the $2 trillion of stimulus spending that the administration approved, and prior Trump administration approved some of as well, to keep America from collapsing and going into a very severe tailspin. So ordinarily, too many dollars chasing too few goods is going to give you inflation. In this particular case, nobody was working. Nobody, or very few people were working. Very few people had the money to put food on the table, and that stimulus spending was not, I don't think, a basic cause of inflation. I think what Keith was talking about earlier, and Frank was talking about earlier, has to do more with the mangled supply chains and trying to get out of the pandemic-induced recession.
So
I agree with everything you said, but so what? What does that got to do with what I was talking about?
I think you were wide of the mark.
I haven't heard it refuted by anybody.
Well, I tried to give you background so that you'd have a full deck to deal with.
I was on the call just like you were, and I heard what everybody said, and I thought Keith made a lot of sense. I thought Frank made a lot of sense. I think you made a lot of sense. I think Michael makes a lot of sense. But I'm not talking about Biden's gaffe, because I think that's spin on the part of the media. I don't think this was a gaffe. And I got Michael to agree for a second there that this, in fact, is the platform of the Democratic Party. It's
no. Wait. What you got me to agree with was your articulation of the Democratic platform is the Democratic platform.
Okay, I'll take that.
Okay. All right. But
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Biden
right.
said was not the Democratic platform. It was a conflation of pieces of the Democratic platform that literally made no sense. So,
Well, I think that what Bezos said made sense. Unfortunately, I'm a minority in this call. So I've made my point, and
Welcome to the team.
everybody go to t.me, whatever it is, and look up whatever that was posted of what Bezos said, and see if there's a glimmer of what I'm saying that makes sense as well. So let's move on.
So no, because I don't think we've.
What do you mean, no? Let's move on.
Well, I can I just say one thing, which is just to summarize.
Okay, then you be the moderator.
Well, okay. No, I don't want to be the moderator, so I'll shut up. That was a good.
Excellent.
That was a good threat.
you know, what we need here is to get some advertising on the show, so that the moderator can say, we have to leave that here and let's go to break.
But
then someone will sell us something, and then we can come back with a new topic.
Now we'll talk about it more on the other side.
We'll talk about it yes, take it up on the other side.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
But I think that the truth can't be spoken about, otherwise I'll end up as the moderator. But there is a truth.
Brent, you be the moderator because you started this.
I'm going back to my old role.
You mean lethargic? Okay, good. Go ahead, Steve. What's up next?
So what I was trying to do is take us to a slightly more cerebral conversation about money flows by government versus money flows by corporations into society. Like when a corporation invests in growth happens. When government takes money from corporations and invests in, say, infrastructure or social security or whatever it is, normally that's a cost on growth. It's very rare for government to produce growth.
But what happens when government invests, puts the money back in to society?
It depends what it does and where it puts it and what it pays for it. So, for example, when government buys medications from pharmaceutical companies and vastly overpays compared to the rest of the world, that's not good for society.
But I'm talking about, the checks that the former guy signed so that everybody knew that he was giving them all $2,000.
Well, that's just one example. If government took over pharmaceuticals and refused to pay the prices, and so the private price of pharmaceuticals came down because the only source was government, that would throw a lot of wealth back into society for growth. So government can do good things and it can do bad things. And corporations can do good things and bad things. And I think having an ideological preference between corporation-driven growth and government-driven growth is probably a mistake in the abstract. You've got to look at the specifics of each thing.
And I don't know who is favoring one. I don't know who's in that argument. I think everybody understands that there's corporations driven growth, and there are certain things that government does which don't directly drive growth but provide the infrastructure for growth. So if we had no highways, we'd have much less commerce. If we had no airports and harbors, we'd have much less commerce. The growth depends on both investments in the common, which is the infrastructure, and investments in particular enterprises. But I don't think they're opposed to each other. They're mutually required in order to make anything happen.
Well, that's
if we didn't have the government basic research in building up the foundations of what we now call the internet, we would be in a much different place. We wouldn't have an Amazon. We wouldn't have any of the .coms. But the government didn't build those businesses. The government invested in the infrastructure that allowed private enterprise to build businesses based on that infrastructure.
Well, in that case, it was R&D. It was quite a small price. They invested in R&D, and it took them till ICANN was separated from the Department of Commerce before the internet became a true utility owned by everyone. So there's nuance.
That's right. But it was because in the early days, there was no return on investment that a private board of directors could be happy funding.
Yeah, no, but you're right.
The development took much too long.
Yeah, but Michael, I bet you anything. If the question was, give me a list of bad decisions governments made with resources, you could also come up with a long list. Governments don't always do good things, like all the pork barrel stuff that goes into all the bills, for example.
All? That's a big statement.
Well, I'm generalizing, but I think we all could acknowledge that stuff gets spent that probably in a rational world wouldn't.
Yeah,
yes, I agree. I would put the defense. I'd put the defense budget in that list.
I agree with you massively, actually.
What you're coming back to is the Keynesian concept of the multiplier effect, and I think what we're really talking about is the difference between government spending on roads and bridges, which provide jobs, not just to the people who build them, but to the people who support them, and basically making the economy run. Or as Paul Krugman likes to say, one person's revenue is another person's spending, or one person's spending is another person's revenue. As far as corporate, the corporate situation is concerned, I think there's a lot to be said about the fact that some of the biggest companies, Apple, for example, or Elon Musk's portfolio, are worth trillions of dollars, in part because they have so much money in the bank sitting there doing nothing. not providing any benefit to society, not building infrastructure, not even building a company. They're just making the stock worth more. And that money, some of it should have been paid in taxes, which would have been spent with a multiplier effect.
Yeah, I think that can be true in specific cases, or it cannot be true. Like I generally think competition leads to irrationality. So, for example, how many different supplies of shoes are there in the world, and how similar are all of the shoes, and how much resources go into making shoes that's totally wasted? Because in competition, there's winners and losers, and half the investment ends up being in the losers.
Yeah, let's consolidate all the baby formula manufacturing to one company, and
that's
they'll,
a good
they'll be
idea.
very efficient until they can't make any.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So, but all I'm throwing a light on here is that the debate between Bezos and Biden was really a philosophical debate about who can do a better job with resources.
That's an argument that has no end.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any winners.
Well,
So
I think one of the issues is that we have a society of vastly unequal incomes and wealth, and the system that Bezos favors creates enormous wealth at the top that doesn't quite flow down to everyone in poverty. The question is, what do you do about everyone in poverty? The Republican answer is, well, they need to work harder. They need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And the Democratic answer is, we need to do more to help them.
You know what? There was an interesting article in the Times this week about this very topic. What it discovered or talked about was the fact that there's this great stratum in the American economy made up of people who have small companies with local or regional monopolies, like car dealers. Average car dealer is making $1.58 million a year. If you really want to get wealthy, you don't do it by going to work for another company. Steve Ballmer was the first person ever to become a billionaire working for somebody instead of starting a company, just to give you some perspective. The thing that goes unsaid is that the opportunity to access capital, if you're a small person starting out, especially if you're Black or brown or purple, is greatly reduced. And it is that reduction that makes it hard for the underclasses to ever do anything other than work for somebody else.
That's a very important point. I'm glad you brought it up.
No,
I
Depressing.
put the article in the app. It's a good thing to look at. It was about Wednesday, I think.
And
it's
t.me
/ Gillmor gang. I just this is a bit personal, but my sister is the youngest of 6 kids in our family, and she's worked all her life. She is now 60.
That does not work.
And she lives in England. It's called a council house. Frank, you'll know what a council house is. And she's paid rent on that council house for, 30 years. She probably bought the house 3 times over. And, her income is derived from looking after Down syndrome people who she cares for. They live in her house and she cares for them. And I just bought her house for her, and it was less than the cost of a new car. And that tells you the difference between normal life and my privileged life. Basically her life, and she has 5 kids who are in similar situations. And it's, normal life sucks. Why? Because unless you find a way to escape, which I luckily did, you end up living off wages, and the whole nature of wages is designed to not give you savings. So you end up with nothing.
Keith, this is where you start bringing in some Marxist philosophy.
Well, I could, but I'm just describing a person now. So
Yeah. Well, before you do that, let me just commend you, man. That to do that for your sisters.
Yeah, pretty
That's
amazing.
really unreal.
Yeah.
not
That's-
really, because it was, to be honest, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could do more. It's in my world, it doesn't make a huge difference to my life negatively to not have that money, and it makes a huge plus for her. So I can't really claim huge credit because the pain on my side is quite light.
You can.
It
You
doesn't
absolutely
matter.
can.
The fact that
Yeah.
you did it.
Yeah.
Some people can do it, but won't even think about doing it, let alone doing it.
You're absolutely right, Brent. 100%.
Well,
Yes.
Kudos.
I'll give you
I don't know.
Kudos. It's
Uh,
interesting that when you were telling that story, moving aside from the really heartfelt and important part of that story, that you can buy a council house or a
By
council
the way, what
flat
is a
now.
council house? Like you,
It's basically a project, but in the history of the UK, since Thatcher, there's a right to buy. So her, just to give you a sense of it, her house is available for her to buy at roughly 1/3 of its actual value. So she does get credit for the rent she's paid over the years. And that's a right to buy that Thatcher brought in. Obviously, Thatcher was very right-wing, focused on individual choice, and considered municipal housing to be a bad thing and wanted people to have the ability to own their own home, which at the time I was against, because I considered municipal housing to be a utility available for everyone. And if you let people buy them, it goes away, which is true, by the way. That is still true. But
Yeah, and there are many people who have bought them and then rebuilt them and turned them into palaces, basically, which kind of makes it, it feels unfair.
yeah,
But
that does. Yeah.
in London, especially in London, there's all these,
Yeah.
kind of 3 or 4 story buildings with lots of 1 through 4 bedroom apartments in them, condos basically, that used to be owned by all the different councils around London, like Camden or whatever. And the right to buy kicks in there, and a lot of those buildings have now become gentrified. And those apartments are now only available to rich people. It'll cost you £1 to £2 million to buy one, which is obviously outside normal people's budget. So then you get this whole situation of people living on the streets, and then you get the situation of slum landlords and stuff like that. So on the one hand, buying my sister's house is good for her, but from a societal point of view, the removal of municipal housing being available is bad for poor people.
It's also interesting that there are so many projects, council housing areas, whether they're apartments, flats, or homes, literally situated right in the middle of the gentrified areas. So it's not unusual to drive across in front of $1 million home into an area where the low income people are living in homes that are absolutely in neighborhoods that look blighted next to neighborhoods
Anyway.
that are absolutely spectacular.
Frank, when's the last time you've been to Atlanta? You don't have to
Actually-
go to see that.
Yeah, I actually, it's when I was in Atlanta last, I didn't see it. I was staying in the Four Seasons, so I'm.
But it does all go back to, Bezos and Musk, admirable as they are, and they are admirable, are not the solution to these kinds of problems.
Yeah, I have one last question because I have to jump actually, but there was a report on Bloomberg today that an executive inside Twitter told his employees that the Musk deal was going through. Did anyone else hear that? And what do we think of that?
Nah.
He didn't say it's going through. it was more of a polemical point. He said he was more making the point that Musk has no out clause, and they're acting as if it's still going through.
But he does have an out clause if he pays $1 billion.
I think that's true, but even then, he has to leverage a reasonable cause. I think he could get sued for more than $1 billion if his out isn't reasonable.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go, guys. I have to bounce. I'm sorry. Great conversation. Thanks, Brent, for starting it.
Thank you, Frank.
Have a good week.
See you guys.
See ya.
Sorry, I gotta go. Yeah, I hope I have a good week. I'm in the middle of real estate hell. So there you go. Talk to you later.
Always are everywhere in the world.
No, it's, I honestly, I said this, it seems like it's just worse here. It's such an arcane system to buy and sell a piece of property or two pieces of property in the UK. It's horrible. I've never experienced anything like it. And it's actually, it makes me filled with anxiety. I don't sleep well. It's horrible. I can't stand it. But hopefully
that's why the Russian oligarchs are buying up all the property. They're the only ones who can afford the lawyers.
I say put all the people that are coming in from the Ukraine and the Russian oligarchs' houses that the government has taken over. That's what I say.
And then fill up the boats.
And then fill up the boats. Goodbye, people.
Bye.
Thank you.
So long. And then there were 6.
There were. Who is the host right now?
You.
No, I refuse that.
Free.
You may have refused it, but you've been that for the last 20 minutes. So what else do you want to talk about?
That was a good job then. Good job,
He's
Keith.
done a very good job. What do you want to talk about? Does anybody else want to take over moderator duties? Okay.
Did you notice that Square had its investor day? We may or may not want to talk about it, but Dorsey and Robinhood, by the way, this week both doubled down on Bitcoin wallets as a part of the financial ecosystem that they want to make permanent. And I thought, given what's going on and how the headline news around crypto is not positive, of course, it's kind of fairly brave of them to go there.
When you say double down, how much?
Well, so there's two things that characterize Dorsey and Robinhood, which is the belief that Bitcoin stands alone as a worthy platform on which to build digital financial systems. And two, the belief that you have to be your own, it's called custodian, that you have to own your own private keys, that you can't trust those to a third party like let's say Coinbase or Binance. And in order for you to be your own custodian, you have to have one of these things. This is a hardware wallet. It has a USB on it, and it's got all kind of cryptography to prevent someone stealing it. And basically your Bitcoin sits there. If you lose this, there's a way to recreate it in software and get a new one and turn it into the one you lost. And somebody that finds it can't crack it open. So it's a hardware wallet. And Square said all their customers are going to be offered these, and so did Robinhood, which means that and on your smartphone, you basically have a software representation of that. It uses Bluetooth to connect to it. So it's just like the Apple Wallet, basically, on your phone, except all the information is on here. The money, if you like, is on there. So they both doubled down on that. I haven't looked at Square's stock price this week to see what happened, actually, or Robinhood's. But everything.
They're relying on a hardware backup to sort of secure the wallet.
Yeah, and
That's
it means
you would put in your safe deposit box or something.
you're putting this is your safe deposit box,
right.
and
But you don't want to lose that then. So you have
well, if you lose it, there's a way to get it back. When you set it up, you create a variable number of words in a certain order. It can be up to 24 words, And if you can type those words back in the right order, and then validate that it's you, you can get back whatever it was that you lost if you've misplaced this. So there's a way to do it. But then if someone steals your words, they have to, and types them in, they can recreate your wallet, but they probably can't validate that it's them.
Man, woman, person, camera, TV.
There you go.
Yeah.
But the bad news is they tell you the words, you don't choose them. So yeah.
Well, they told him the words. He didn't choose them.
Well, he chose those.
Did he?
And they were
Yeah,
the
that
best
he
words ever. They're the greatest words.
He was recounting the story, and he just looked around the room, kind of like,
Best.
Yeah, the best words. Yeah.
The best words. For the best people.
right, he has the best words,
Oh,
like
By the way-
Kaiser Sose.
And that, what that makes me think, and Musk, by the way, doesn't really agree with Dorsey here. Musk, as we all know, is a fan of Dogecoin, which is a direct competitor to Bitcoin in his mind anyway. So it's interesting just watching, depending on the topic, how people line up. And Dorsey seems to be very strong pro Bitcoin right now.
As he has all along.
Yeah. Yep. And the other thing I noticed is that Mark Andreessen has abandoned, at least temporarily abandoned, Clubhouse. He and a guy called Elad Gil did a YouTube live video, not unlike what we're doing 2 days ago, about what's going on in the markets and what startups should do in this climate and so on and so forth. And that's another area where there's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Well, Keith, can you back up for just a second? So when you say abandoned it because he was doing something on video, or abandoned he said something about Clubhouse that
Or he's
day?
finally thrown in the towel on it.
No, he just didn't use it for a major streaming event.
So you're
which-
intuiting that he's,
So you're saying he went to YouTube instead of Clubhouse? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, which I found surprising given how he's been very consistent on Clubhouse ever since it started. It may mean nothing. It may mean nothing. Maybe
Well, this is only personal and anecdotal, but I haven't checked into Clubhouse in months.
Mhm.
I'll go with years on that.
I think I deleted it last week.
Uh-oh. Well,
Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, I deleted some other stuff. I just got a new phone and I just got rid of some stuff.
it's all.
I mean, the interest in Clubhouse has been gone for, I can't even remember how long. It's been a long time. I don't hear anybody talking about it anymore.
Except
Nobody
maybe
goes
on
there.
Clubhouse.
So when
I don't even get those notifications anymore. Maybe even that was like, well, why are we sending these things out? Now nobody's paying attention to this.
What about Twitter Spaces? I see those come up on my phone now all the time.
I see it, but not at that frequently. I mean,
But
I don't know.
isn't that weird? Because I mean, there's a lot of benefit to Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces that it doesn't easily translate to YouTube video.
But there, given the opportunity to see and hear, and not just, if you're just, I don't know, a couple of dudes talking, which is kind of strange for me to say. Sometimes it feels like, yeah, Clubhouse is great for that kind of stuff. But sometimes you want to, like, I'll run a clip or something, or I'll, a visual. And if you have a screen, why wouldn't you want to see it? I mean, it just feels to me like Clubhouse is one dimensional in a way, whereas, at least video, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok or wherever, it's multidimensional. It brings something more tangible to whatever the interaction is. So why would you strategically cut that interaction short on the richness that you could possibly have just because you're doing live audio, as opposed to, You go to YouTube where you'll get the live audio, but you'll get the video and all that other stuff too.
Well, it used to be that it was thought that it was bandwidth issues, right? And that, audio took less bandwidth, so people were comfortable with that. And a lot of times people said, hey, with the video, I don't even watch it anyway, I'm listening to it. But look, we've been working with video for forever, and I agree with you. There's so much nuance that you can catch in someone's expression and in someone hesitating and
look at Brent. He never says anything, and it's very expressive.
Yeah, there is more communication bandwidth, obviously, if you can see faces.
Yeah.
Faces are very expressive.
Yeah, like if
But
I say the
it depends on how you are consuming media. A lot of people with audio like the fact that they don't have to pay visual attention to something.
Yeah.
They could be cooking, folding clothes, gardening.
There are a lot of. I
driving.
agree with you. There are a lot of people that listen to this show. Paul Greenberg, for example, he's right there right now, probably.
Paul,
Mostly
comment on Facebook. It'd be interesting to see if he's there listening.
Whatever. Every time I talk to him, he refers to something in the middle of a show. He basically uses it as a nightlight, basically, and I think that's an appropriate. If you look at since we've been on Substack with the video feed, you can see where the peaks and valleys of attention are, and it's fairly continuous for about a quarter of the people that are watching. So I can assume that Paul's methodology is pretty accurate, which is,
can I say
I'm
something?
listening, it's in the background. I'm also watching the stock market crash over on that screen, et cetera.
I harken back to my 1 year as a radio disc jockey. And my boss came into the studio one day and he said, Michael, the problem you have is that you think people are listening to you. They're not listening. You're just on. What they're doing is trying to make coffee, pick out 2 socks from the drawer that match in the dark, fix their kids' lunches, shave, wash up. You're just on. They're not listening.
That's right. But they are hearing.
Yes.
And their influence, their ideas and their thoughts are influenced by the partial attention that they're spending there.
As Tony Schwartz said, remember, we don't have earlids.
By the way, Brent, Paul has a little heart on our.
Yeah, I saw that earlier.
Right now, so
I wanted to know if he was listening now. Right now.
Maybe.
By the way,
If
another
you're listening right now, let us know.
Another argument, I guess, for video, although it's not like we're really arguing either one.
No.
When's the last time you heard an audio file go viral? I mean, it really, you only, videos are only things that seem to go viral, unless, I don't know, if somebody has the missing 18 minutes from that Nixon tape or something. But it just feels like the more elements you have in whatever, interaction is taking place, the more potential it is to be experienced in a way that will create even more interest from others.
True, and I think part of that is because the way people browse in social media is visual. So you can only browse things that are presented visually on Twitter or Facebook or Twitch or anywhere else. So, the pictures help with virality.
Somebody, I forget who it was, but somebody actually made the point that says the biggest potential competitor to podcasts is YouTube, because have you ever tried to search for a good podcast? The mechanisms for search for podcasts are terrible. Whereas with Google being behind YouTube, it's definitely search is definitely being optimized for video and not necessarily audio. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Andreessen probably went to YouTube over staying with Clubhouse.
Well, I'll tell you why I love video. I just feel like I know someone and can get a better feel of them when I can see them. You know, when I hear them, it is just less so. I'm only getting a part of them, but seeing them, it gives me a whole different idea of who they are, how they respond, how they even think. Because sometimes you can even feel like you could see them thinking, you know, and I love that about video.
I think Tina's absolutely right that we are our species is designed to be visual. Our brains are built to see and understand faces, and not only to recognize them, but to recognize various tempers and issues that are crossing people's minds. Our faces are very expressive. So when we don't have that facial recognition data coming in a conversation, we lose quite a bit. And it makes me wonder if some of the divisiveness in our society today is due to the fact that we are using so many different ways of communicating that don't include capturing the visual.
Well, I think that, it's moving toward a composite of video and audio. I would be surprised if Clubhouse adds video. I think Twitter Spaces already has video. It's just called a different product.
What about Truth Social? Are they going to add video?
Yeah, just as soon as they
As soon as they add truth and social.
As soon as they add truth,
they're going to have a steak first, and then they're going to think.
Tuna fish cans in a tight string. They're going to add more string because they need more bandwidth.
But you know what? Going back to Clubhouse add video, and with Twitter Spaces adding it, it's easier to go the YouTube route than it is, with already having video and optimizing, search for that, than it is to go the way that Clubhouse and Twitter are trying to go.
The CEO of
what is that?
Of Google.
This is Andreessen on the YouTube show I mentioned. And I showed this frame because at the start of the show, he showed off what his quote tonight's whiskey was, and it was an Indian whiskey, and the hosts were Indian, and it made me think how tone deaf billionaires are. They kind of show off, when they do these things, they show off their billionaireness, and it was really weird to see.
Do they know they're showing off, or do they forget they're showing off?
I think they forget. They forget that the thing they're doing shines a light for any normal person on how different they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that Andreessen's got a very strong sense of performance, humor, and other things. It may be hard to understand it and track it, but I don't think that was a 1% billionaire. What was that phrase we used? That Biden made a mistake. Yeah. I don't think that was a billionaire gaffe.
No, well, he definitely doesn't think it was. I
agree with him.
Yeah, I did have a reaction to it though, just guttural. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why he didn't use Clubhouse, so he could show off his.
That's why he wanted to go on YouTube.
Yeah,
I agree. He had a visual thing to say.
Yeah.
A visual thing to say. That's actually a pretty cool statement.
I'm doing some recordings with
a visual thing to say.
We're doing some recordings of some of the Firesign Theater for another project, and I gave them the choice of audio or Clubhouse basically, or Zoom, and they both said Zoom.
It's in that extra dimension.
No, but I would be surprised. I was surprised to see it simply because they, Zoom requires I mean, I think they're used to having done Zoom, as we all have. I think that it was easier for them to think that way. But I also think that
Really?
yeah,
They're audio people, though. I
yeah,
mean,
but
if there's
they
ever
were
been
audio
an
people
audio
100 years ago. That's
group.
not what I don't think that's what's dominant. I think what's happening is that, I mean, I've been on Brent and Paul, well, I guess it's Paul's happy hour.
Yes, the
for-
whatever he calls that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, for about a month. And it's fascinating, primarily because it's not available to the stream.
It's not broadcast.
It's not broadcast,
It's
but
recorded.
that doesn't prevent people from inserting some of the things that come up in that environment on shows that are broadcast. So there's a synergy going on here across the paywall, basically, is what I would say is
Between a backstage and a
yeah,
stage.
exactly. And the feeling of just being in a room with people, I think, trumps the technology of live audio. As Michael said, there is well, maybe he didn't say it, but there's a fascination for the Firesign used to call what they did the theater of the mind, or movies of the mind. In other words, the production value of what you imagine is going on when you're listening is unlimited. The budget is wide open. And that the machine movies have caught up to that a little bit with the digital technologies of today. And as a result, there's not a lot to imagine. There's no way that I can be as interested in somebody else's imagination as my own. It's personal to each of us. And I think that live audio has some of that, also the protection of people being sick of being on Zoom.
Yeah, but live audio, the way that we currently see it, I mean, is not that, it may be thought-provoking for what's being articulated, but it's not very visual. So I mean, what Firesign Theater was doing was a visual experience that was in audio, and I totally get that and second that, but that's a little different. I mean, whenever I've been on Clubhouse, it hasn't evoked some sort of visual for me.
I don't know. There was this Clubhouse with the director of, what was the name of the movie about the end of the world?
Don't
Look Up.
Don't Look Up, yeah. And the director and several of the producers of the show were on,
Okay.
and it had this quality to it. I'm not sure that it relates to this visual versus audio conversation, but there was a quality to it which was really quite magical. It reminded me more of the like War of the Worlds, or the Martian invasion that Howard Koch wrote.
You can do that with
Sure. Well, I mean, what the Firesign Theater did was really absorb and amplify and magnify a long tradition that started in the 1930s with network radio drama, which really had some remarkable productions, which fortunately have been transcribed and you can still listen to. And that went on through the 40s and 50s and even to the middle of the 60s. So the theater of the mind wasn't invented by Firesign. They adapted it to a new era and to a new form of
well, they didn't invent surrealism either, but they mixed it in.
No, they created something incredible based on a long audio drama tradition.
I think also opera or maybe it's still very popular. I don't know, but I know in like my grandmother's day, opera was a popular audio thing on radio, but then again, it evokes the images that you would see in that opera. If you know that particular opera and you've seen it before, you're thinking about the whole visual experience while you're.
Well, sure. The Metropolitan Opera broadcast I think it was Saturday afternoon. They would broadcast live from New York. But audio and visual media go back to Edison. We phonograph records, the early movies, and they go back even before Edison. And we've lived with both, and neither one has completely supplanted the other. But TV did kill the radio star to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is generational, though. I mean, you think about baseball. People that grew up in the 30s and 40s and before that, the red barbers, the guys doing the play-by-play on radio, they lived by those things because a lot of them didn't have any alternative.
I wonder if you had never been to a ballpark, how you could comprehend the description of the audio description of a ball game, or if you've never played baseball, what is going on? So in that case, I think Red Barber was referencing a visual memory that people had when they listened to him.
Actually,
Ronald, they used to do baseball recreations. Do you know about that?
That's how Reagan got started.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan was one of them. They would simply broadcast the scorecard in real time as a text feed, and someone in the studio would imagine the plays and describe them as though they could see them.
Talk about your Foley there.
Yeah.
The crack of the bat.
Really?
Yeah, but now with video, you can actually see a 450-foot home run, and once you've seen it, you don't just want to hear it; you want to see it in here.
Oh, absolutely, and see it again, and see it again from a different angle. And now we'll show it to you from another angle.
I think there's one exception where audio becomes, for me at least, number one, which is in the car. In the car, sport, news, music, probably roughly equal time-wise. It's all audio, and it's great because your eyes are on the road, and it's fantastic. But what my life at home is dominated these days by, I don't know if it's happening to you, but I'm getting more and more Substack stuff I read from branded Substacks like Protocol, Newcomer, the Casey Newton thing. I can't remember what it's called. I read Barry Weiss often, much more than I used to. So I've got Substack on the one hand, so more reading and longer form as well. And then on the other hand, more video, a lot of YouTube actually for me.
I watch a ton of YouTube.
Sound like you might start to need your the newsletters that you're subscribing to and that you're getting, that you're going to need them read to you.
Maybe in the car, but I've never been a big audiobook person actually. So it's probably just me. I probably won't do that, but I get your point though.
Yeah.
So, Substack offers a fair amount of what they call podcasts, which are basically audio generated versions of newsletters. I haven't listened to one because I can't get past the problem of serial, SERIAL, in terms of jumping around, sampling, skimming. None of that is possible on audio, particularly. It's called a needle drop, and it's very ineffective. I just want to call out to Dennis posted an article in the Gillmor Gang Telegram feed.
T.me/Gillmor Gang.
That one. And it's by David Brooks, who's a columnist for the New York Times. And, he's frequently right of center. That's his role as a columnist in the publication. But this article is devastating because it goes back to the conversation we were unfortunately not having about about what Bezos said, but the basic thrust of it. Dennis, do you want to just describe what the basic impact of that thing is?
I'm not sure if I can. One of the things in contemplating it that came to me over the last few hours is, and it's in today's paper, is that we all behave logically. It's just the jumping off point that we differ on. Bezos. Brooks talks about sort of the red state thinking as being hierarchical and how that's necessary in a lot of cases, but it has its downside.
That's gotta go.
Have a good week. And then he
Brent.
talks about blue states.
Go ahead.
And how we're much more relationally oriented. And while that can be quite good, for example, espousing and supporting beliefs that we all have the absolute right to lead our best lives, versus having structures of society impose ideas on us. Seems to be the crux, his idea of the crux of the argument between the left and the right today. And I find there's a lot of truth in that. And you have to read the article, but I think he's making a plea for both the left and the right to try to see the other side's view at least a little bit.
Yeah, and he basically talks about this moral structure that the Republicans use and that the Democrats use, what they fear is the antithesis, what the Republicans fear is the antithesis of the moral argument. And basically what Brooks is saying is they both have to live in the same world in order for, some sort of what I would say is center to develop.
Yeah.
I thought it was an excellent article.
It was just, too long for me to cram in before the show, but I hate it when that happens, when somebody on the right makes a better point than I have.
But it also made one of the points we've flirted with a bit on a few of the gang shows, which is the Democrats have currently a natural advantage in the moral culture wars field if they understand how to play their hand. Because he makes the point that he really describes it as the people who believe that life is given to them to be lived in a certain way, which he means the right, are an ever decreasing minority, especially as religion becomes a minority sport in the US, and that the Democrats have a natural majority if they understand how to articulate their point of view.
Yeah, it seems like both sides. I'm not a fan of both sides isms, but it seems like both sides would think the world is just hunky dory if the other side would only agree with them, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, well, it is fairly binary. It's the sense of moral freedom. It's really interesting. Reagan and Thatcher stole the concept of the individual, and it became a right-wing concept. The idea of the individual, the supreme individual, the free individual, it became a right-wing concept and was contrasted with the state as an overlord. But in fact, the way he frames it, the free individual is a kind of a liberal thing. And the individual that really does have only a small number of choices due to external rules given to them is really a right-wing thing. So the free individual should be, going back to the 60s when some of us were young and we understood this intuitively, the free individual is the thing that questions authority and should naturally sit on the left.
The free individual is also the person with access to capital, in my humble opinion.
Ultimately, that's true. Our resources, at least resources.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be capital.
Yeah.
Well, you lost me on that
Capital-
last point, but
Well, it's hard.
Capital
to
is
be free.
fungible, right, Steve?
It's hard to be free if you're poor. Was the point?
Yeah.
well, I heard that earlier. Yes. Michael, last thoughts?
Yeah, let's put this topic on a shelf and come back to it because it's very rich.
Well,
and it underlies
Shelton
everything.
said t.me/Gillmor Gang.
No, I would like, I would like to discuss it more, but it's time to end.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take everybody else's comments as the end. I want to thank everybody who showed up and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, I will end the stream.